Two legendary strategists from ancient China, separated by centuries, yet united by conflict and wisdom. Sun Tzu and Sun Bin. But who was the real mastermind behind the art of war? When most people hear the name Sun Tzu, they think of one thing: the art of war, the legendary book on military strategy. But what if I told you there was another Sun Tzu, whose tactics were even more deadly? Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at the life of Sun Bin, the knee-capped general. His reputation as a military commander and thinker spread far beyond his time. He wrote The Art of War, a masterpiece on strategy, psychology, and leadership. He was a civilian advisor whose influence depended on his ability to persuade generals to follow his plans. Much of what we know about him comes from the records of the Grand Historian by Sui Makian, a popular but often inaccurate source of information. There are also other texts claiming to be Sun Bin's military manual, but they were likely written by later authors trying to capitalize on his fame. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our future videos. Sun Bin lived about a century later during the Warring States period. These essays may have been written over a span of hundreds of years and by multiple authors, perhaps starting with Sun Bin. It covered everything from logistics and intelligence to troop deployment and psychological warfare. Sun Bin was famous for his bold and unconventional tactics, such as the use of spies, feints, and ambush. In one famous episode, he convinced the King of Qi to build a road directly to the palace of the neighboring state. So when Zhao's army arrived to attack, they found themselves right outside Qi's front door and were easily defeated. Sun Bin's tactics were based on his understanding of human psychology, both of his own troops and those of his enemies. He knew that soldiers fought best when they were confident and well trained, but also that they needed to feel a sense of purpose. That's why he emphasized the importance of selecting the right leader, one who could inspire and motivate his troops to fight to the death if necessary. He may have been one of the contributors, writing during the Warring States period. Then later, between the 3rd century BCE and the 3rd century CE, someone compiled these essays, added commentary, and presented them as the works of Sun Tzu. This would explain why the writing style differs between the two parts of the book, and why some chapters are more practical while others read more philosophically. He was said to be a direct descendant of Sun Tzu, and was trained in military theory under the famous Master Gui. Unfortunately, his story takes a dark turn. He had a fellow student named Pang Wan, who, driven by jealousy and fear, betrayed him. Pang had Sun Bin wrongfully accused of treason, and in a cruel punishment, his kneecaps were removed, leaving him permanently crippled and unable to walk unaided. But despite his body being broken, Sun Bin's mind remained sharp. He was rescued by emissaries from the state of Qi and brought to their capital, where he became the chief military advisor. His brilliance soon turned into real victories. Now let me first say that our knowledge of both Sun Tzu and Sun Bin comes primarily from legends and some historical records. Instead of engaging in open battle, Sun Bin suggested a diversion. They would attack the capital of the invading state, forcing their troops to return home. The plan was risky, but it worked flawlessly. Not only did they save their allies, but they also humiliated their enemies. But Sun Bin's greatest moment came 8 years later in the Battle of Mailin. His old rival, Pang Wan, now a general of the Wei state, led an army to invade. Once again, Sun Bin anticipated his moves and decided to play a trick. He ordered his troops to reduce the number of visible campfires each night, making it seem as if his army was afraid and retreating. Pang Wan, arrogant and hungry for victory, fell for the trap. He led his army through the narrow wooded pass where Sunbeam had placed 10,000 archers in ambush. When the Wei army entered the pass, arrows rained down from the trees. Pangwan realized the next day that he had walked right into a trap. His army was devastated, and he took his own life beneath a tree where Sunbeam had previously carved an inscription reading, "Pangwan shall die under this tree." Both were considered semi-mythical figures, larger-than-life heroes whose deeds inspired awe, but were sometimes hard to pin down to reality. In the case of Sun Tzu, there is no surviving evidence of his existence apart from the book attributed to him. Some historians question whether Sun Tzu was a real person or a collection of ideas. That's why it's important to clear up some confusion regarding these two great military minds. They are not the same person, but they are related. And to understand that relationship, we have to start from the beginning. Sun Tzu, also known as Sun Wu, was believed to have lived during the spring and autumn period around the 5th century BCE. In 354 BC, Sun Bin advised Qi to confront the invading army from the state of Xi. These stories make Sun Bin sound like a legendary hero, but the truth was probably much more complicated. Sun Bin never held a formal military position. So who really wrote The Art of War? Recent research suggests that it may have been a compilation of military essays rather than a single book. Regardless of how it came to be written, the original Art of War provided a systematic approach to military strategy. To learn more ways Sun Bin's tactics differed from those of his famous ancestor, stay tuned for our next episode.